Boston in the 1960s. The streets are quiet, but the city is holding its breath. Women lock their doors twice. Curtains are drawn. Because a ghost is roaming in the darkness. The Boston Strangler. And in those days, no one knew that this darkness would one day be known by a man's name, Albert DeSalvo. On June 14, 1962, 55-year-old Anna Slessers was found dead in her bathroom. A noose made from an iron cord was tightly knotted around her neck. Police believed it was an isolated murder. But only 6 weeks later, 85-year-old Mary Mullen, 58-year-old Nina Nichols, 77-year-old Helen Blake all shared the same fate. Their ages and social backgrounds were different, but there was one similarity. The killer entered their homes without any forced entry. The people of Boston were now saying, "I'm not safe even in my own home." Albert DeSalvo grew up in poverty, under the shadow of a troubled father, exposed to violence from an early age. This environment turned him into a machine of crime. In his youth, theft. Later, the Green Man incidents, where he sexually assaulted women in their homes and fled. DeSalvo would knock on women's doors, introduce himself as a worker or official, then force his way inside. Before his arrest, we suspected him in hundreds of cases. But no one back then imagined that this man could be the most terrifying serial killer in Boston's history. The Boston Strangler's method was chillingly systematic. He knocked on the door, introduced himself as a repairman, an official, even a neighbor. Once inside, he quickly took control. The victims were strangled, and a signature knot was always tied around their necks afterward. This knot was unusual. It indicated a killer who was strong, but also careful and deliberate. At first, the murders seemed unrelated, until police, even before the concept of serial killers was fully understood, began to realize they were committed by the same person. Boston was no longer just a city's name. It became the name of a nightmare. Self-defense classes, how to protect yourself seminars. Stores couldn't keep door chains in stock. The public is desperate, and the police cannot stop the killer. When 15 women had been murdered, the darkness hanging over Boston was so heavy that people couldn't sleep, wondering who the next victim would be. Ironically, Albert DeSalvo was not arrested as the Boston Strangler, but for a completely different crime. When he was detained after an attack linked to the Green Man cases, no one suspected his connection to the serial murders. Until DeSalvo made a confession to his cellmate, George Nasser.
He told me everything. How he entered, how he strangled them. He knew all the details.
Nasser informed the police. DeSalvo was interrogated, and shockingly, he confessed to the murders. DeSalvo was never tried for the murders. The evidence was insufficient. The only proof was his own words. DNA testing did not exist at the time. His confessions were inconsistent. He knew accurate details about some victims, but not others. Many detectives still ask, what if it wasn't him? Some experts believe that more than one killer may have been active in Boston during those years. There were differences in the methods. That suggests not a single killer, but possible copycats as well. DeSalvo was transferred to a prison, but on November 25, 1973, he was stabbed to death one night by unknown individuals. As if someone wanted this story buried forever. In 2013, the case was re-examined using advanced DNA technology. Biological evidence from one victim matched DNA taken from DeSalvo's family. This proved that he was at least responsible for one murder. But the remaining 14? There is still no absolute certainty. Albert DeSalvo, was he a monster? A liar? Or is there an even more disturbing possibility? Were multiple dark souls roaming Boston? The Boston Strangler case is still not fully closed today. But one thing is certain. The fear that descended upon Boston during those dark days remains etched in history as one of the most chilling serial crime cases ever. And some questions will never be answered.